What is the future of finance? How fintech industry will change business and our life? Please welcome our special guest, Mr. Chris Skinner.
Dzień dobry and dziękuję. Nice to be here. So, the Deputy Prime Minister referred to digital and fintech and the Polish vision of the future for startups. And Gayla just referenced humanity and the evolution of humans from apes. I'm going to talk about both in a little bit more detail because a lot of people think digital is a layer on top of what we have already. It's a channel, it's a project, whereas actually digitalization is a revolution in humanity. It's the fourth revolution in humanity, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Often people say, what's the future? What is the future? That's the question I'm asked a lot because I spend all my time trying to think about what is the future. And to find out the future, the best thing is to look to the past in terms of where we have come from, can tell us where we are going. And in the past, we've had 4 revolutions in humanity, and there's one more to come very shortly. The first revolution goes back 200,000 years to actually becoming humans, Homo sapiens. 200,000 years ago, there were 7 forms of human on Earth: Homo habilis, Homo sapien, Homo erectus, Neanderthal. There were many different forms of humans. And the question you may ask is, why is it we're the only ones left? Although there may be some Neanderthals in the room, I think most of us are Homo sapiens. The reason we are left is that we're different to all the other forms of humanity that existed 200,000 years ago. All the other forms of humanity lived like apes in terms of an alpha male controlling the tribe, and therefore the tribe could only get to be so big. Thank you. Oh, I can hear myself now. Yeah, thank you. Is that up? It's my friend Mike. Dziękuję. Most of us, the other forms of humans, lived in ape-style colonies where an alpha male controlled the group. As a result, the group could only grow to a certain size before it split into 2 because the alpha males got to be too vicious, too aggressive. Humans are different. We live in colonies of hundreds. And the reason is that we created shared values, shared beliefs, stories, myths, legends that allowed us to live together peacefully in very large groups. And that's the reason we survived, because when Neanderthals or Homo habilis attacked Homo sapiens, it wasn't that we were stronger, there was just a lot more of us. And this is the foundation of humanity today, a very strong foundation of humanity today, in that Poland in 1600 was a pretty big country. Unfortunately, at war with the Ottoman Empire, the Muscovites and the Swedish, and as you all know, the hussars and the cavalry were decimated in the 17th century, such that by the 18th century, Poland disappeared. There was no Poland, shared between different countries, and particularly Germany and the Austrians. By 1900, still no Poland, but today, Poland is back. My wife is Polish. She loves this map. So we only believe countries exist because we're told they exist. It's a shared belief that we have that these countries exist. We only believe that we have banks because we're told that they're banks. So we believe they're banks. We only believe we have companies because we're told that they're companies. They just exist by laws. And we believe in the laws. We believe in our governments. It's just those beliefs that enable us to work together, to live together, and to have respect for each other, and to build businesses and enterprises. In the second revolution in humanity, we moved from these villages of hundreds with shared beliefs to cities of thousands, such as the ancient city of Eridu, which is effectively near Basra in Iraq. And this ancient civilization of 10,000 years ago had thousands of people living peacefully with shared beliefs, with priests and kings as governments over the city. And the priests and kings had a problem in that the farmers produced an abundance of crops, but they never actually stored those crops. So in bad years, people starved. So the priests thought, well, let's invent money. Let's get the farmers to come up to the temple, and in return for coming to the temple and leaving their crops to store for the bad years, we will give them a shekel, an ancient coin. And what could you do with a shekel? Well, as a farmer, you could enter the temple and have intimacy with the goddess on earth, Inanna, who was represented by the ladies of Eriador. So yes, prostitution is the oldest profession in the world, and the second oldest is accountancy. Money is just invented as a control mechanism by governments because it enables value exchange through tokens that can be trusted for being good for the money. And that created a whole new way of the economies working and maintained civilization as civilized as a control mechanism. In the third revolution of humanity, we move from cities of thousands to metropolises of millions, moving across continents and across the world, thanks to the invention of steam power. The first steam-powered anything was in 1606, which is a steam pump to get water out of the mines. The last steam-powered patent was 1933, a steam-powered aeroplane, still used by Ryanair today. And this created a challenge because moving across continents, across countries, across borders, needed some form of system to trust in exchange of value across borders, across countries, across continents. So we invented paper money. We invented the check. And we allowed the check to be produced by banks because banks were given licenses by governments. Therefore, we could trust them. As a shared belief, we could trust that a bank, because it's backed by a government license, is good for storing value, is good for issuing notes. And banks, therefore, were invented to support the third revolution in humanity. And what you see is each revolution of humanity invents a new form of trade, commerce, and transacting. Now, banks allowed us to put checks in the post, which unfortunately is still something that we do today. Not a good idea, particularly when it takes weeks to process. I recently got a check from an American client, and it took 28 days to get the money, mainly because it has to go through the SWIFT counterparty network. It takes time, and my bank won't give me the funds till the bank that issued the check gives them the funds. So even with a counterparty trust network, it's still not wholly trusted. That will change with blockchain. And the issue we have today is that it's expensive and slow to physically distribute paper in a localized network of buildings and humans. What we have to do in banking is to reinvent this for the digital age, for the digital distribution of data through a globalized network focused on software and servers. And this is the fourth revolution in humanity, the digital revolution. It is not just a layer on top of what was there before. It is not just a project. It is not a channel. It's a reimagining of everything. Completely rethinking everything. The 5 biggest companies in America are now digital companies, and their physical industrial era predecessors are dying because they are too heavily layered with physical structure, too many humans, too much footprint of physical manufacturing capability, too many years of legacy thinking to reimagine themselves. The Ubers and the Airbnbs produce more value than the Marriotts and the BMWs because they can, using platforms, connecting people who need rides with people who can give rides, connecting people who need rooms with people who have rooms. A really different business model based on platforms. And in banking, we can see this taking place too. You know, the Stripes, the Ants of this world, producing so much more value through a platform that's digitalized, connecting people who have money with people who need money. And the oldest banks in the world, like JP Morgan Chase, may have a lot of value, being the most valuable bank in America, but the value they're producing is nothing compared to the future value we see in the likes of Stripe, outnumbering the value produced by 22 to 1. This is the future, focusing on a function of finance rather than the whole financial supply chain, focusing on a piece that can be done really well through an API or an app, rather than doing everything, which is what banks traditionally have done. It's the reason why $100 billion of funding has gone into fintech in the last 4 years. And fintech is not fintech anymore. It's actually a granularity of insurtech, wealth tech, reg tech, artificial intelligence, machine learning, biometrics, mobile wallets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some of which are mature, some of which are just emerging. And as we look at the way in which fintech is developing, it's open sourcing financial services. It's opening the market to collaborative co-creation. It's opening everything so that there's no longer anything that's proprietary and controlled. It's all open sourced through internet-enabled APIs, apps, and analytics. That's why China's outstripping America. You know, America is a legacy economy full of legacy infrastructure. That's why they still use checks. That's the reason why there's only $112 billion worth of mobile payments last year, compared to China's $5.5 trillion through Ant and through WeChat, WePay. In Africa, as Gayla referenced, a reimagining of everything, because they had nothing before. And now there's 7 billion people on the network, able to transact, trade, and talk in real time. Combine that network with artificial intelligence and deep data analytics and deep learning and machine learning, and we see the world changing. 5 years ago, Google's artificial intelligence systems thought that was a cat. It's a very phased cat, or hazy cat, but yeah, it's a cat. Considering the machine doesn't know what a cat is, that's pretty impressive. 3 years ago, Facebook said that they could recognize your friends and family better than you can. More accuracy of their artificial intelligence facial recognition systems than the human eye. And just at the end of last year, Google did an experiment where they said to one machine to talk to the second machine without the third machine finding out what they were talking about. They succeeded. And what's interesting is now we have JP Morgan moving it a step further, doing 360,000 hours of analysis of contracts in a second. The good news is a lot of lawyers will lose their jobs. The bad news is so will a lot of bankers. Citigroup think that 1 in 3 bankers will be automated within the next 8 years. And certainly all the teller jobs will be disappearing. All the trading room jobs are disappearing. Anything that can be written into an algorithm is going to be automated. The world is changing rapidly. The good news is the world is all being included. If 4 billion people have no access to financial services, now they have through the mobile network. And as we bring in these billions of people, one of the intriguing aspects is what's happening with identity schemes, in that the United Nations believes under Sustainable Goal 16 of their goals for 2030 that everyone should have a legal identity. And they're working actively on a project to give everyone a digital identity. Every person on the planet will be born with a digital identity based on a mobile biometric, shared on a ledger. This is not fiction, this is a reality that's actually being worked on, because we are revolutionizing the planet through digital platforms and digital schemes, with digital identities, including everybody. No one is excluded from the financial network. No one is excluded from services. Everyone can be tracked and traced. Maybe that's worrying for some. For many, it'll be something that's exactly what's needed to raise people out of poverty, to give people hope. And I don't have time to talk about the cryptocurrencies and shared ledger schemes, but which one are you betting on? I see that the Polish Bitcoin Association will probably be betting on the Bitcoin. I'm betting on Ether, because the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance is starting to get some rock and roll. R3 raised $109 million yesterday in an announcement that they've got their funding. And Ripple's one of the fastest growing cryptocurrencies out there, because it's backed by the banks. These schemes are the revolution of the Internet of Value to support the Internet of Things in the 4th revolution of humanity. The digitalization of everything, not a channel, not a function, revolution, a reimagining. And just to conclude, the 5th revolution is coming. And what we see is we've moved from communities of hundreds to cities of thousands, to metropolises of millions, to globalization of billions. Everybody is now on the network. As we do that, becoming human, becoming civilized, creating industry, and going digital, we've always created a new form of value exchange or trade through shared beliefs, through creating money, through giving banks licenses, and now to open source everything. for trade, commerce, and value exchange. And when you think about the next revolution, one of the obvious things is money will not exist because we've digitalized it. It's now some form of digital value structure. It's the reason why Captain Kirk never pays for anything on Star Trek. You never see him get his wallet out. Because money doesn't exist, it's just wireless digits transmitting between things on our behalf. Everything is working on our behalf in some form of scheme that's networked. In fact, what's interesting right now is Elon Musk is actively working on going into space with the idea that we'll be colonizing Mars within 23 years. It may sound ridiculous, but science fiction rapidly becomes science fact. 100 years ago, if someone had said you could travel across continents quickly and easily using airplanes, they would have thought you were nuts. Now we do that, and we don't think it's normal. And the key thing about Star Trek is the reason there's no money is that we've moved beyond wealth accumulation. The whole tenet behind Star Trek is that wealth is no longer the driving force of humanity, but it's the betterment of humanity. I really hope that will be the case in the fifth revolution. I can't wait and hope that I'll still be around to see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. for your speech.